so I know.
Yep, on.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us today, especially on this freezing cold Friday afternoon. Hopefully you're not snowed in, or if you are snowed in, I hope you're enjoying watching us this afternoon. Armed with a nice hot cup of coffee today. So bearing in mind that it's Mother's Day next weekend, what we thought we'd put together for you today is a hand-tied bouquet. A very similar principle to the type of hand-tied bouquet that you do for a bridesmaid or a bride, but obviously on a slightly larger scale and popped into its own receptacle of water. So I'm just going to prepare my flowers first. I'm using this rather lovely chrysanthemum called Furore. It's a spray chrysanthemum, really lovely lime colour, nice and vibrant, very appropriate for the spring. Now, what you need to do with hand-tied bouquets is make sure that all of the foliage is removed below the tying point. Alright, so just going to start doing that. I have already prepared the other stems. And my stem count for this bouquet is 5 stems of spray chrysanthemum, 5 stems of roses, 3 stems of lily, 5 stems of mini gerbera, and then some assorted foliage. The chrysanthemum, as I said, is Furore. The rose that I'm going to use is one called Pink Avalanche. Now, with roses, they have like a self-preserving system really, where they have like a rather coarse, slightly unattractive petal on the outside. Now this is what we call a guard petal. They can easily be removed. It's not detrimental to the longevity of the rose, but it does just make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So I've removed the guard petals and I'm removing any of the leaves that are going to be below the tying point. Very fortunately for anyone that works with flowers, avalanche tend to be quite thorn free, so I haven't had to remove any of the thorns from this one, and it's really comfortable to work with. Okay, so hopefully you're joining us and enjoying the Friday afternoon. I hope you've got a nice hot cup of coffee or tea while you're watching. If you can hear us loud and clear, hit that like button. Don't forget to share us with your friends. And if any of you are watching last Friday's performance, I promise I will keep it strictly flowers this week and no weird voices. Okay, so this lily that I'm using is one called Muscat. And as you can see, it's started to develop, so you can see the pollen. So I'm just going to pull the stamens out. If you pull them out when they're only just showing, only just starting to develop, they haven't formed the sort of fluffy pollen. So actually, as you can see, I rub it in my hand, you can see you don't get any stains. Once they've started to develop a little bit more fully and they've got all the fluffy pollen on them, then that's when you get the stain issue. The best way to remove stains is if you get something brushed on your sleeve, get a piece of sellotape, push that against the pollen, remove it, and then it should take the pollen away with it. It's the pollen under the microscope looks like a little ball with lots of little hooks on, and it's those hooks that actually grab into your fabric. Alright, now with the lily, again, removing all of the lower leaves that are going to be below the tying point. And then the gerberas, you've probably seen me show you loads of times before about this, but once again, how to wire a gerbera. It's what we call external wiring. Pop the wire into the head of the gerbera and then just twist the wire all the way down the stem. Again, it's not detrimental to the longevity of the gerbera. It doesn't affect the cell structure. What it does do is keep it in an upright position, but it also gives you some flexibility with the head because you can actually bend them into the position that you want. Alright, so just to recap, we've got Furore spray chrysanthemum, we've got Pink Avalanche roses, got Muscat oriental lilies, Rambo mini gerbera, and then my selection of foliage that I have here is pistache, as in pistachio nuts, that kind of thing, so pistache. I've got Lauris tinus. Now the Lauris here is non-blooming, so it's just purely foliage. You can buy it on our website with the little white blooms, and you can also buy it with the slate grey berries, but this is the non-flowering. Got acacia or mimosa. Again, this is non-flowering, this is just the foliage. And I've got buxus. And again, just removing any of the leaves that are going to be below the tying point. Okay, so again, I hope you're enjoying this afternoon. I hope you're looking forward to the demonstration. If you can hear us loud and clear, hit the like button. And also don't forget to share us with your friends.
We've got a question to say what size wire to use. What size wire do you use to wire the gerbera?
Okay, well that one was actually a 71 by 260. You could use a 79 by 260, that would give you a little bit more support. If you're using it for a large gerbera rather than a mini gerbera, I'd go more for 79 or even a 90, depending on how big a head the gerbera is. But because these are mini gerberas, they're quite light and delicate, so the 71 is absolutely fine for that. Okay. It's not always absolutely necessary to go all the way down the stem, only really need to finish where the tying point is. Alright, so that's all of the flowers and the foliage got together for the bouquet. The other things that we need are the wrapping and the bag or the box. So we'll come on to that later. We'll start off with the bouquet first. I'm going to use twine, garden twine, to tie with. Some people use ribbons, some people use other formats. I prefer to use the twine, the garden twine, simply because it is biodegradable. So when the bouquet is dead, everything here except for the wire on the mini gerberas will be biodegradable, so it can be thrown away in your green rubbish box. Right, so starting off with a couple of pieces of buxus. I'm actually going to make a round hand tied of greenery just to act as a support for all of the flowers. And even though it's just the greenery and we haven't started putting the flowers in yet, I have started to do those in a spiral form, and I've kept the tying point in one place. Okay, the beauty of doing that is it enables everything to stand and balance quite well. A couple of pieces of greenery here I'm just going to add in, give a bit more substance. Okay, so as you can see, that's the start of the hand tied. Now I'm going to start off with a lily in the centre. I'm actually going to pop that all the way down the centre of the bouquet. Now if you imagine that your hand is the vase, you can actually use that to release and tighten the foliage so you can slide the flowers in. Okay, so that's the lily that I've started with. Then I'm going to add a rainbow and some of the chrysanthemums, and very much working in a circular motion, adding flowers as we go along and keeping very much to that spiral format. Okay, so if you've got any questions, please post them below, and Laura and I will do our absolute utmost to try and answer you as best we can. Okay, tell us about your weather conditions today as well, because it's absolutely horrendous out there today. Tell us what you're doing. You've got something nice and hot to drink. Tell us what flowery plans you have coming up, whether you've got good events coming up in the year that you need to plan for. And obviously we can help you with that as well, should you need any help. And if there are any particular items of floristry that you'd like us to demonstrate for you to help give you tips and hints, then obviously ask us to do that. everything that I'm using today is available on our website. That's www.trianglenursery.co.uk. So if there are flowers that you see me using here today you'd actually like to try and work with yourselves, then please do feel able to go and order online. It's a really easy, really good ergonomic website, very easy to use, just like any e-commerce site. Very, very straightforward. Just follow the directions, and obviously if you do encounter any issues, by all means give us a call and we'll talk you through.
We've got Debbie O'Hara asking, can we just buy the stuff or do we have to buy on bulk?
Okay, so there isn't a restriction on, there isn't a minimum order. There's no restriction on the quantities that you buy. The only restriction is that because we're wholesale, you have to buy in bunch quantities. So for example, the chrysanthemums I think currently are in 20s, the roses are in 20s, the lilies are in 10s, and the mini gerberas are in 30s. So I guess it is bulk, but for example at Mother's Day, it doesn't take very long to use up 20 stems of chrysanthemum and 20 stems of roses, etc. I mean, there are other varieties that you can buy in 10s, Lysianthus for example, and things like that. So you don't have to buy in 20s, but it does depend very much on the variety that you select. Each individual item on a website does have a picture to aid you with your choice and your selection. And by clicking on that picture, it will also take you to another page which actually gives you slightly more information on that variety. It will give you the grading. Now we do actually purchase our flowers from two separate auctions, Aalsmeer and Rheinsberg, and they both grade their flowers in two different ways. One grades them in a lettering system, A1 being the better grade and BA being the lesser grade, and then the other auction grade their flowers in a star system, 5-star being the absolute best that you can buy and then coming down in stars. Now if you buy a lesser grade flower, that doesn't mean you're going to get poor quality product. That actually means that they haven't been graded as well within the bunch. So for example, you might get a kinked stem, you might get differing head sizes, and so on and so forth. It's almost like buying your pristine apples from one of the top range supermarket and then going and getting your apples from the local farm shop when they're windfalls or something like that. So that's kind of the difference. But if you've got any questions, obviously do please pose them and we'll answer them as best we can.
We've got Kerry asking, do you deliver to Rotherham?
Yes, we do. We have 4 levels of delivery service. We have what's called a non-timed delivery. That's £9.95 plus VAT. That means your flowers will be delivered between 7:30 in the morning and 6:30 in the evening. Now, all of our delivery charges are set. So regardless of the quantity of flowers or items that you buy, whether it be 1 bunch or 100 bunches, the delivery charge remains the same. So it obviously makes sense if you're ordering flowers and you need sundry items as well, such as scissors, tape, pins, oasis, that sort of thing. If you order them all in one order, they'll come as one consignment and you'll pay the 1 delivery charge. So the other delivery options are an AM or a PM, which is £15.95 plus VAT, or the earliest option, which is before 10:45, is £26.95 plus VAT. Now the flowers, as I said, do come by courier, so they are flat packed and dry in boxes, so when you receive them you will need to remove them from the box, cut them, condition them. So we normally recommend that you perhaps take delivery of your flowers sort of 3 days before your event, so it gives them time to develop, time to drink, so that they're ready to work with. When buying from a wholesaler like us, it's not like you're buying from either a florist or a supermarket, for example, because they will have done that conditioning process on your behalf. So already the flowers that you buy from those kind of outlets will already be a few days old when you purchase them. When you buy from us, they've literally come from auction to us, we've packed them and sent them to you, so they literally couldn't be fresher. Therefore, obviously, you need that little bit of extra time for them to drink and to develop. All right, hope that's helpful. So, still carrying on with the bouquet here, I'm just going to add another one of the roses.
just to tell you a little bit about all of our people that are watching. We've got Adriana, who is snowed in. She's been sledging with the kids, and now she's warming up with a nice cup of tea and watching us.
Fantastic.
I've got Sam, who's snowed in, although it's melting and turning into slippery ice. Really hoping we don't get any more snow. I'm absolutely the same there.
Aren't we all?
We've got Marsha. Let me sit down to you and have a look. What's snow? I think she's snowing in as well.
Oh. I think that the only people who seem to be really enjoying this weather at the moment are the children. I must admit my neighbour's children have created the most spectacular snowman in our back garden.
We've got Joan, who asked about, she brought some hydrangeas and they died on a Wednesday. She brought on a Tuesday and they died on a Wednesday because it was too cold and doesn't last long. Can you give her some tips on hydrangea conditioning? Okay, so hydrangeas are unique in the respect that they drink from the heads as well as the stems. So as the name would suggest, hydra, meaning water. So my suggestion for conditioning with hydrangea is when you receive them, cut the stem at an angle and slit the stem up about 2 inches maybe, and then completely submerge those, the head and the stem, in probably a bath of water so that the heads can drink and the stems can drink. Leave them like that for a few hours, or even overnight wouldn't be too long. Then the next day take them out of the bath, cut the stem, slit the stem up again, and then pop them into vases of water. Allow the water to sort of drip, and they should be absolutely fine. I mean, I used hydrangea for a wedding a couple of weeks ago. We collected some of the flowers a few days ago, and they were still beautiful, and they had actually been in oasis. Hydrangeas aren't overly keen on being an oasis, so it is all about the conditioning really. That's the thing with hydrangeas. Once you have arranged with them, what I would suggest you do is get a water bottle, spray them and mist the heads so that they can still drink from the heads as well as taking moisture from the stem. Right. We've got Jazz asking, where would you suggest getting containers to hold the flowers, please?
Okay, so when you say containers, are you thinking of buckets? If it's buckets that you literally just want to store flowers in when they've been cut and conditioned, we actually sell those buckets online. If it's containers as far as glassware and things like that, again, we carry a certain range of glassware on our website. However, containers, it's amazing really what you can actually use as containers. I mean, jam jars, for example, you can wash those out, use those, decorate those, use those as a container or a vase. I've even known people to use old tins which they've washed out, they've decorated and painted. So yeah, the sky's the limit really on what you use as a container. However, again, going back to what I said earlier, it is all about the conditioning. Once the flowers have been conditioned and they've had time to drink and develop, you can then transfer them into a suitable decorative container. So I hope that's helpful. All right. I'm just going to try and finish this bouquet. I can't talk and arrange at the same time. I can really, but... Okay, so nearly finished on this bouquet. As you can see, we're just spiralling the stems. I'll just pop that last mini gerber in.
We've got Angela who says she's in Watford. Snow's not too bad, she's just very cold. We've got Mary who also is enjoying our demonstrations, and she's in Snowdon.
Wow, lovely too. So that's our bouquet. So you can see how I've kept the stems all spiraled. I'm just going to tie it off with some string.
There's an art to this.
There is an art to this. I literally... No, I'm cheating. I'm going to lay it down and tie it.
Missed any questions, bear with me. Oh, we've got Christina asking, when the flowers arrive, would it affect the flowers much if they weren't in water or left out of water for potentially 24 hours?
When you receive your flowers from us, they will have already been out of water overnight, because the courier collects from us late the day previous to your delivery day. They're then transferred to the central hub overnight and then distributed from there to wherever your home address is. So already they will have been out of water for 24 hours when you receive them. So it is imperative that they get water as quickly as possible. So no, ideally I wouldn't leave them in a box again for another 24.
Would it depend on what the flower was? Because certain flowers are able to, for instance, chrysanthemums, lilies, daffs.
Yes, I mean our roses, sometimes we import roses from Colombia and they've come in by air freights. Same with our carnations, so they've literally been out of water for a couple of days. So as long as you condition them properly, the cell structure shouldn't be harmed. As I explained earlier, when any flower is out of water for any period of time, it has a self-preserving mechanism where it forms a callus over the end of the stem. So in order to get them to re-drink, you have to cut that stem, open up the cell structure and allow the water to go up the stem freely. So providing you condition properly, it shouldn't be an issue with things like chrysanthemums, carnations, some roses, alstroemeria is okay, but your softer flowers like lisianthus,
Sweet peas?
Yeah, definitely sweet peas. Lisianthus, sweet peas, stocks, any of those softer varieties, I wouldn't leave those longer than 24 hours out of water ideally. And likewise, some foliage like eucalyptus, for example, it's not entirely happy in being out of water for a long period of time. So again, I'd say 24 hours maximum ideally. Cut that and get that into water as soon as you can. Foliage like soft ruscus, hard ruscus, pistache, salal, they'll be happy out of water for at least 48 hours, if not a little bit longer. So
perfect. Let's go on. We've got no more questions.
Okay, so there we've got our bouquet, which I've just tied with string. Now, just to cover that tying point and tied it up a little bit, and also to give it a little bit more stability, I'm just going to cut some tape. I think my colleagues, bless them, have sent me some tape that they've glued the end down so I can't get it out. They are winding me up a bit, my colleagues, after last weekend, or last Friday. I think they're trying to... here we go, I found it.
We've got Anastasia asking whilst you're hopefully looking for the end of that.
Found it, ready!
She's doing some flowers for her 90th birthday, and for a gentleman from the Caribbean.
Oh wow!
Thinking of using Strelitzia, birds of paradise. Strelitzia.
Yep.
And anthuriums. Any ideas on how best to use them, and are they available now?
Okay, both Strelitzia and anthuriums are available now. The anthuriums will arrive with you boxed with a little water tube on the end of them, and the Strelitzias will arrive in quite tight buds. What I would suggest is perhaps to go with those you can buy online from our website, you can buy a mixed tropical pack of leaves which has palms, crotons, all sorts of exotic looking foliage. That would work really well with both varieties of flowers that you're selecting. I would probably stick to something a little bit contemporary in my choice of arrangement, because you've got such impressive blooms there. You almost want to do something a little bit minimalist or structural, just so that each individual flower can be shown off to its best advantage. So I'd keep it, as I say, quite structural, quite contemporary, with perhaps a little bit of a sort of funky twist with some of the foliage. You could perhaps plait some palm leaves or something like that, twist some palm leaves or aspidistra leaves in, just to give it a little bit of a funky feel. One of the interesting things about Strelitzias is that when they arrive, you'll have one sort of set of flower almost one that look a little bit like coming out of a beak, if you get what I mean. What you can do, I haven't got a strelitzia here today to show you, but what you can do is once that bloom has died, you can gently tuck your fingers or your thumbs underneath the bloom, in between where the sort of almost the beak part, the casing of the flower is, and actually remove another bloom. You sometimes get 2, maybe 3 blooms all together. So once that first bloom's died, don't throw it away, because the chances are there's another bloom waiting to come out. Both strelitzia and anthuriums don't like the cold. So when you receive them, make sure you cut them, condition them and put them into a slightly warmer domestic environment rather than a fridge environment or a really cold outer house. Okay, hopefully that's answered your question. I've just covered that, whoops, I've just knocked my rose off. Let me move that, there we go. I've just covered that tying point with some pot tape. And then I prepared earlier some wrapping ready for this bouquet. So basically starting off with a square of cellophane. Then for the wrapping around the bouquet, I've literally folded it over. So you have, I don't know if you can see that, you've literally got 2 points. Alright, so I've done that with 3 pieces, and in true Blue Peter style, here's one I did earlier. I realise now I haven't actually got my sellotape, so just bear with me 2 seconds. Ah, somebody was really organised for me. Sellotape.
I've just got someone asking, what do you mean by conditioning? How do you do this? I'll put in the guide, but what is meant by conditioning, Debbie?
Okay, so conditioning basically is the floristry term for cutting the stems and putting them into water, giving the flowers a good drink. It's not, it sounds more complicated than it is, to be fair.
It's a bit of a scary word.
It is, yeah, it really isn't scary. So you can imagine this is a stem of one of the flowers that you've just purchased. Okay, so I don't know if you can see there, I was explaining earlier that all flowers have this self-preserving mechanism where they form a callus over the end of the stem. So it's gone very dry on the end there. So that's what we need to get rid of. So by doing that, about 2 inches or 5 centimetres, whatever you want to say, cut them at an angle, okay, and then pop that into a bucket of fresh clean water. Allow the air to circulate, and then it will help the flower to develop fully. Now the reason for cutting at an angle is, if you can imagine that's the bottom of the stem, this is the bottom of your vase or your bucket. If you cut straight, that's going to sit flush on the bottom of the bucket or vase, so water's not going to get up that stem. If you cut at an angle, pop that into a vase or into your bucket, the water can go hit that part of the stem and go up the stems quite happily, and the surface area exposed, or the surface area of cells exposed there, is far greater than the surface area exposed there. So by cutting like that, the water is going to go up the stem more readily and in larger quantities, and hopefully revive that flower, get it drinking, rehydrate it really quickly. Okay, that's all it is. So really not as complicated as the name would suggest. Conditioning just basically means cutting the stems and putting them into water. All right. Okay, so my wrapping, I have 3 pieces of cellophane here that I've bent and got the little points on. Folding that round the tying point. A bit of a delinquent rose there, it's not going where it's supposed to. And literally just sellotape that around the tying point. And then the next one. So don't forget to hit that like button if you can hear us, and don't forget to share us with your friends. And if you'd like some more tips and hints on varying styles of arrangements and different aspects of the flower trade, then do go to our YouTube channel, where you'll find lots of other tips and hints and how-to guides. And as I was saying earlier, if there's something specific you'd like us to focus on, then by all means do ask, and we'll try and slot that in one of our regular Friday lunchtime live streams. Okay, so we have, I don't know if you can see, sorry? Okay, yeah, we'll try not to cause any electrical issues here this afternoon. Oops. Okay, so I'm just going to take the edges of the cellophane down so they don't flap. Now, as you can see, where I've taped the stems, it's still in that same tying point. And that's how the wrapping looks. Now, the next thing to do is to cut the stems. So, judge how long you want your stems to be, depending on what receptacle you're putting the bouquet into. I'm actually sorry, disappearing, I'm just finding where my box is. I'm actually going to use a bag. So you can imagine that's going to come up to about there. So cut the stems there. Gosh, tough stems here. That's the foliage. I'm just firing the stems off at my colleague Laura here. Sorry Laura, I didn't mean to hit you. Okay. So, at the risk of making myself look a fool here this afternoon, sign of a good hand... Sorry, that one was quite violent, I do apologise. At the risk of making myself look an idiot this afternoon, the sign of a good hand tied is that it will stand on its own. Ta-da! Just going to lay it down quickly. I've just knocked off my cellophane on the floor, so bear with me one sec. Okay, so I will stand it up there. So to put the bottom, as it were, on the base of the arrangement, I'm just going to fold corners over and score the middle, so you know where the centre of the cellophane is, and that's there. So then place the bouquet in the middle. Sorry. Get my string ready, and then bring cellophane up and around the bouquet. Roughly sort of pleating kind of format, really. If you can, try not to get this part too tight, because that's effectively going to be your water receptacle. So the more space you can get water in there, the longer it's going to be before the bouquet needs topping up. And again, the trusty string. Nice and tightly around the stems. Now, at this point, you can put a bow on this tying point if you're not using a box or a bag. I'm going to use a bag, so not going to bother putting a bow on that. And then you just fill that with water. So just a jug of water, basic jug of water. At this point you can put flower food in with the water if you wish to. And just fill the bouquet up. Now I would use normally another jug of water, because as you can see it's only gone so far up the water bag. So another jug would bring it up to here. But just for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to pop this in to the bag. And there you have your Mother's Day hand-tied bouquet. Alright. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching us this afternoon and managed to get through the whole demonstration this afternoon without making a fool of myself and using a very strange voice. I hope you all managed to stay dry, warm and out of all of the danger of the snow that's about at the moment. Thank you very much for listening to us this afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed it. Got any comments, again, please post them, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Have a lovely weekend. Thank you.
Just before we leave,
Tina's
asked a question.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you can use a tiny drop of bleach.
No, don't do that. Okay, so the reason for a small amount of bleach in the water is purely just to keep any bugs at bay, to stop the bugs from forming, stop the algae from forming. Okay, that's fine, but you shouldn't need to do that if you change your water regularly or you use flower food. Okay, the bleach can be a little bit, what's the word? I wouldn't say toxic exactly, but it will actually start to send the ends of the stems of your flowers black, and they will deteriorate eventually. It shouldn't be necessary, so just stick to fresh water, ideally every day if you can, or put a flower food in, and that should be absolutely fine. And certainly do not combine bleach with flower food. Got a bit of a chemical situation going on there, especially not in a tin or a galvanised container. All right.
Perfect. Brilliant to end.
Thank you. Bye for now.